Hi, my name is Ron Wixman, and I was a professor of cultural and political geography at the University of Oregon. In addition to that, from the time I was 6 years old until I was 16, I studied at an Orthodox synagogue in Greenwich Village where I lived. And I learned a great deal about Judaic culture from my rabbi, but also studied the history of Judaism, history of Jewish culture, etc., for many years afterwards. One of the things that struck me was how different the interpretations are of certain things. And I'd like to talk to you about two things in particular. One of which is the kosher dietary laws, or rather, both are within the kosher dietary laws. One is the prohibition on eating pork, and the second has to do with mixing meat and milk. It's really amazing to me how we live in an era of scientification. Everything has to be justified as though it's scientific. So we're looking for what are the physical, health, etc. reasons behind the kosher dietary laws? Well, the answer is there's absolutely no relationship whatever between health and kosher dietary laws. Kashrut refers to anything being ritually pure, which includes people's behaviors. Now, one can even find in journals somebody did an experiment, and the meat and the milk, you shouldn't mix them because they used to use wooden bowls, and that you shouldn't eat pork because it has trichinosis and it spoils faster than any other meat. Well, look around the world. People in the tropics eat pork. That has absolutely nothing to do with it. If we put those two kosher dietary restrictions in the context of religion and religious culture, we see something really important. And that is that these reflect some very, very important basic philosophical views on life itself. Let me explain the prohibition on pork. There is no prohibition on pork in and of itself. The Bible does not say in general, you can't eat pig. The Bible says you can only eat animals that have a split hoof and chew their cud. Let me repeat. It must have a split hoof and chew its cud. It's very simple. It has to have horns. Let's look around the Middle East. Greece, Egypt, Palestine, ancient Persia. Everywhere in the Middle East, we find at the temples, doesn't matter what their religion is, that there are huge sacrificial altars. What was the temple in Jerusalem? It was a huge sacrificial temple to which the Hebrews sacrificed millions of long-horned cattle, long-horned male sheep, and long-horned male goats. Notice every animal with a split hoof and chews its cud has horns. As I said, the Hebrews are not the only ones. Go to Syracuse on the island of Sicily. The gigantic temple of Zeus had huge altars for sacrifice. And the only animals sacrificed were male cattle, goats, and sheep. Pigs do not have horns. Doesn't the Bible also say that you can't eat a rabbit or a camel? Because although they chew their cud, even though a rabbit doesn't, you cannot eat them because they have toes and not a split hoof. Look at a horse. Look at a donkey. You can't eat those because even though they chew their cud, they don't have a split hoof. So while it's amusing for people to say, I have to find a scientific reason why the Hebrews wouldn't eat pork, it's just because they don't have a split hoof and chew their cud. Read the Bible itself. Another interesting admonition is the one about not mixing meat and milk. And we read, oh, they used wooden bowls. And if you use the same one that had milk and it spoils and it ruins it, why don't they just read the Bible? The Bible is very, very clear. This has to do with the Judaic view of the sanctity of the mother-child relationship. This is basic. In Judaism, a family is a mother-child. The husband supports them. This goes for animals as well. And when we look at creation, and this is what I was taught not only by my rabbi, but by my grandparents, and that is, God created the world and life. How is life maintained? Life is maintained by females giving birth. Therefore, you may not kill the mother and its own child on the same day, for that's an abomination. You cannot kill the child with the same knife that you kill the mother, for that is an abomination. Nor can you cook the child in its own mother's milk. Nowhere does it prohibit mixing meat and milk. The Hebrews did, and so did everyone else. The admonition about not mixing meat mixing dairy, as they say, with meat is a much later interpretation by radical rabbis in medieval Spain that to make sure that you don't accidentally cook or make a meat dish using the milk of its own mother. You're not allowed to even go close to doing that. Therefore, they decided that mixing meat and dairy in the same meal was an abomination. So I think we need to get over the idea that early Hebrews, like modern Jews, were all scientific and concerned only about health. Neither of those two rules have anything at all to do with health. To repeat, pigs don't have horns, and that's why you can't eat them. They were unsuitable for sacrifice. That was the idea. Notice the kosher laws about how you kill an animal. You must cut its throat with one swipe of the knife. The knife has to be sharpened between each one so you don't hurt the animal as they thought. The animals bled to death because blood symbolizes life. It's the concept of the sanctity of life, has nothing to do with health. So sorry to harangue you with this, but I think it's time for modern Jews and non-Jews to recognize that this is not a health issue, but really interpretation over time. Yes, you can mix meat and milk.